This is John Warren, publisher of the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint newspaper, coming to you with our program from the desk of the editor. As you know, the Voice and Viewpoint is San Diego's oldest and only adjudicated African American publication with continuous publication here. Not only are we available in terms of print copy, you can get it by subscription, single copy sales, retail outlet. You can download our app on in the Google or Apple store and follow us online as well on our website. And so we are covering 87 zip codes, 17 cities and unincorporated areas of San Diego County. And our theme is the people without a voice cannot be heard. And we put a primary emphasis on serving San Diego's African and African American communities. So with that, we're here this evening with you with an open mic. I'm joined with my co-host and dear colleague here, Dr. Leonard Thompson III. And we want to encourage you as we do the open mic, feel free to call in. Number is 858-251-6111. Or you may go online at godradio1.com. You can drop your comments in, and we will be happy to relay to the public and have discussion with you. Dr. Thompson.
Well, Dr. Warren, another special election is almost, they haven't certified the election yet, but the special election is completed. Currently, right now, it appears that Ms. Montgomery will be moving on in a runoff election, but we're still waiting to hear the final results. But yeah, excited about that, and excited about what is taking place in the city. The results in the spacing and the numbers were kind of surprising for me.
Yeah, in terms of numbers being up, the number of people voting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think some people did take it to heart. Prior to the election, the registered voters had said that 16% of the registered voters in the 4th Supervisorial District, which has 700,000 residents, I'm not sure how many of them are registered, but 16% of them had already voted before yesterday's election. And as of last night, they had about 20,000 more votes to count. And of course, to avoid the runoff, any candidate had to get at least 51%. Ms. Montgomery is probably now in the high 40s, but it's doubtful that she'll get 51. It looks like she'll probably be facing Amy Reinhardt in the runoff because Amy was the second highest vote getter. I don't think that Janessa overtook Amy's lead. And so that means that stage is being set. And that means people are beginning to rattle their sabers for the 4th District City Council seat. And of course, we see who some of the voices are there. I'm not going to give them the publicity of calling their names, but I think the people should be looking very carefully at what happens in terms of who's running, what they're offering, what their track record is, and that's going to, I believe, make a difference.
Well, Dr. Warren, I personally don't want to, belabor the point. I'm officially here to announce that I am not throwing my hat into the ring for the 4th Council District. Thank you all who have called and asked. I have selected my candidate and will to be announced, but we first need to make the final step in November and make sure that Ms. Montgomery gets promoted and elected into the next level of government as a county supervisor. She'll be the first African-American woman and only the second African-American to hold a post at that level. And so, but the work is not over. The work is not over. But here's the thing, Dr. Warren, let's just talk about the work. And I want to say this because I think it was maybe for a long time, but I want to say, let's go back as far as 2 years ago. You kept on saying, we have to give you the ballot. We have to get people registered. We cannot sit back on our laurels. We had to do the work. And if we did not do the work, we would not be prepared to go to war when it came down to this election. And I believe that by you keep on pushing, and everybody kept on pushing, register to vote, the election is important, kept pushing vote in advance, get your mail-in ballots, be ready, don't just sit back. I believe it made this election obtainable. But we can't stop here. So let's just talk about the registration and getting things right, because we got a lot of work to do in the next 2 years.
Well, I think that's important. And before people get all worked up, remember, we're really trying to regain some ground we already lost. Mm-hmm. Because, 30 years ago, we had a black chief administrative officer in the person of Cliff Graves, who came to us from having been an assistant director of Office of Management and Budget in a presidential administration. And we also had Leon Williams on the Board of Supervisors, who had come from the city council to the Board of Supervisors with a great deal of respect. Mm-hmm. Leon was the person responsible before the advent of the cell phone for the call boxes along the freeways for people in distress. And so he did a great deal of good in terms of what took place. But until we had the turnover in terms of the court case that opened up the Board of Supervisors to the kind of elections that allow people to run, we just had a bunch of good old white boys and a couple of their wives controlling things. And then we moved in the direction, in the year that Filner became mayor, in the direction of getting some Democratic representation. So right now we have a Board of Supervisors with 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. And Monica, if she's elected as a Democrat, would break that and make it 3-2. So that's one of the reasons labor is so much behind her, because it doesn't want to lose the ground that it gained. We also, at the same time, have Helen Robin Myers, who came back after Fletcher's resignation, and she was retiring, but she postponed her retirement to remain the chief administrative officer through this process, because they had already started a selection process. And it's understood that you don't want to be hiring a new chief administrative officer with 1/5 of the county not being represented in the selection process.
Exactly.
So all of these things are very important. The county is a much different place than the city. When I came to San Diego, I worked for county council, doing legal opinions as a law clerk, and I had a unique opportunity to understand San Diego County, because I came here from Washington, D.C., and I had never lived in a state or a county. I had only lived, the District of Columbia is a government territory that's different than any place else. It's the one place in this country where that's not a state, doesn't have representation in Congress, yet we pay taxes, doesn't have representation in the Senate. Yes, we did some years ago get the right to vote for the president, and eventually a modified version of home rule. And so the person going to this office has a lot of work to do in terms of learning the scope and magnitude of this county. It is not the same thing as being on the city council. The Board of Supervisors is a sovereign, San Diego County is a sovereign entity, just as the city of San Diego is sovereign. And so that means that these two entities have to work together on a voluntary basis, because since we are not a general purpose county like some of the other 57 counties in the state of California, then we can't be mandated by the county. The county has to get permission to do what it does with us. So this is an education process. And, I tried to do some of this when we were going through redistricting. I'm always trying to share information with us. I mean, as I was a political scientist by training, and it's so important that we understand the process. And I believe if we understand the process, then we can get more engaged. I always believe in the 3 E's that I give out, that exposure expands expectation.
Yeah.
And so if we understand, are exposed to what can be, then we will make things happen. There was a time that each of the supervisors got $1 million discretionary fund to give out within their area. And so, you know, Leon did some things, but a lot of us here were able to get things like from Noah Vargas's district when Craig Cox was there, because he was supportive and sympathetic. Joel Anderson is been very supportive through this process, offering to help the 4th Supervisorial District in any way his office could in the absence of the vacancy, in view of the vacancy with the absence of a representation.
Yeah.
So these are things that we want to look at. Monica's got a lot of homework to do, just homelessness and mental health and in-custody deaths and no control over the sheriff or the city council, because both of them are independently elected. And on top of that, with the recent law that went into effect, the terms were changed for them in an effort to unify election time. This current group has 6 years instead of 4 in office. So there's a lot going on that people don't seem to be aware of, and we got to pay attention to.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things that's more that I look at is that these midterm elections, a lot of things are going to take place, and this is, you know, the cry that I'm saying to everybody, that we must activate now. We cannot wait for the future or anything else. We really literally have to activate now, because if we don't activate, we will not be able to go with the onslaught of the pressure of the special interest groups that are out there that are determined to make it Republican, no matter if it's right or wrong. You know, they're going to determine to get Donald Trump in office, no matter if it's right or wrong. So I wanted to switch to that. We talking politics. Okay, 4th indictment come down. Break it down for me. Can I get a education? Can you give me indictment 101? Are they gonna get him? Because I'm concerned about the sister, because she was so matter of fact. She presented as if he had cheated on her herself, and she had that look like, I'm gonna get this one. So
well, you know what? This scenario is unique in American government. Is unique in American jurisprudence, and yet is not unique. It's old in many ways. This lady has done something that is phenomenal from a jurisprudence standpoint. I mean, most people didn't know about the RICO statute. Now, here in San Diego, we knew about it because we had some young people just a few years ago that the district attorney, former district attorney, threw the book at and tried to get them on RICO because they were traveling between out of state, and they had some young ladies traveling with them. And RICO is set up so that when you cross a state line, this goes back, we saw one of our most famous cases was Jack Dempsey, the old fighter, the black fighter who had this young white girlfriend, long when there were still outlaw laws against interracial marriage and the whole bit. And they ended up getting him on RICO because he took her across state lines, and they went after him from that standpoint. RICO is racketeering act, and is geared toward getting people who are in different locations. And some of us will remember the old Elliot Ness Untouchable movies, and we saw how the crime syndicate was spreading out. RICO was used to get the 5 crime families in New York. And some of us remember Gotti testifying. They got him under RICO. Gambino family, they got them under RICO. But these were the federal RICO statutes. Now, what's happened is usually when you have a federal law, states adopt a modified version of that law, and they add their flavor to it. In this case, Georgia has a RICO statute that's even broader. And the RICO statute does not hold back in terms of crossing state lines. And so all of these different people, and we owe a lot to the January 6th committee in the Congress, because they did the hard leg work, and all of these things, the memos, the phone calls, and Willis she spent 2 years, she went through this stuff, she put it together, she came up with 19 people that have been indicted, at least 13 felony counts against Trump alone. Real tragedy, people like Giuliani, who was a assistant attorney general in New York. and built his career using RICO, going after folks, and now he is a victim of RICO. And the thing about RICO is they don't have to get a conviction against everybody. If they get a conviction against one, it's a conviction against the whole group.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. The whole group comes under the umbrella, okay? Also, the thing about RICO is that even if Trump gets elected president, his ability to pardon himself might be a discussion in terms of, say, Jack Smith and the federal statutes, but there is no pardon that the president has over the state. Okay. And so this is a state situation. There is a minimum 5-year prison term, so he will get an orange jumpsuit. And they're anticipating people are going to jump ship. So this is very, very significant in terms of this case. And this case is moving at the same time that Smith is moving. So he's got like 4 different jurisdictions going after him with trial dates. And it could be that the Georgia case might even go to trial even before Jack Smith with the federal case in D.C. And there's no way to separate them out, to break them up and do separate stuff. They're all in this boat together. Their people are scrambling right now. They don't know which way they're going to go. So it's very, very significant in terms of what just happened in Georgia. And there's also a sidebar to this, Dr. Thompson. If you look at the people who have put Trump in such a hard way legally, it just so happens in the judicial process, with the exception of Jack Smith, all of them are African American. Willis is African American in Georgia. Letitia in New York State. Alvin Braggs in the city of New York is there, and the judge in D.C. that's going to try the case, and she's no nonsense. These people have impeccable track records in terms of being litigators.
So let's just talk about the atmosphere and the safety factor, because we're seeing that there's a climate that Donald Trump is creating. And so when he starts saying people are crazy or this is a vendetta and everything else of that nature, because like you said, the majority of them are African American, are we now seeing African Americans now back in the limelight of hate crimes?
Well, you know, people can want to do that if they want to. I don't think that's a wise move. And I think one of the little warning signs to that is what happened with the Alabama brawl.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not the old days where you can just find a black person and beat on them and it's going to be okay. I mean, people are going to fight back. It's not the first time we fought back, though, Dr. Thompson. You know, I like to remind us of histories when people think stuff is happening for the first time. You know, back in the early days of the civil rights struggle, when Malcolm was making speeches about the chickens coming home to roost, and the Klan tried to rise up a little bit in the South to intimidate some black people, there was a group that sprung up called the Deacons. And they made a movie which did a very great injustice to them because of how the movie presented them. But these brothers came together and they said, okay, Mr. Klan, you want to ride at night? We're going to ride too. And they started riding with ammo, and all of a sudden things calmed down from the Klan. We need to get to the point that we understand that we're all in this situation together. You know, I had a friend back in my youth, some 50 years ago, who was uneducated, military in North Carolina, got with a white partner, opened a dry cleaners, got the contract for all of the cleaning of uniforms on Fort Bragg, which they were making a ton of money. The white cleaners didn't like what was happening. They got some gas and burnt his business to the ground, and then they started making threats against his family. A number of us from D.C. and New York, we got in our cars, we went to North Carolina, we carried our guns, we formed a human chain around his house that night, shotgun guards, and pretty soon any threats on his family just dissipated. And went away because, these people are serious. And the irony of it is that he owned a gas station that he had a white attendant running for him, and they bought the gas to burn his business down from his gas station, but they didn't know the white guy was working for him and that he owned the station. But we were able to get him money from up north, from Chicago, to rebuild his business. And things just took off, and he became a very successful financial person. We have to start being concerned about what happens to us outside of where we live.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's crucial.
Okay.
Okay.
So here's the thing that when I'm sharing with African Americans, here's the thing that I'm sharing with us as a nation. We are better together versus apart and fighting each other. We're a stronger nation, we're a stronger people, we're a stronger community. But I'm also encouraging African Americans that we are stronger together, and we have to learn to begin to support each other so that then we can connect with other people and still be viable. One of the things I give a lot of the cultural groups, and I will use the Jewish people as an example, they stick together. So when their voices need to be heard, they're heard because they come from a place of strength versus a place of a handout. You know what I'm saying? I look at the same thing with the Latinos. You know, everybody can say, well, they do this and they do that, but they've learned to start sticking together and pooling their money, and so their voices are being heard, but we have that great impact that we can do too if we learn to work together and support each other. Like you said in the 60s, and when you guys came together, even though it was a different place, you said, they need our help, let's go and do it.
Well, you know, let's not be too hard on black folks, because we were programmed to be separated. When we came off the ship, if we spoke the same language, they broke us up. They sent us in different directions. Mm-hmm. They didn't want people being able to communicate with each other. They understood that. When we look about the Jews have 5,000 years of continuous history, as you know, Benjamin Netanyahu made clear when he spoke before the UN at the 50th anniversary of the United Nations. And so it's a people who know who they are. The Latinos, they know who they are. The Latinos have a rather unique history, mm-hmm. because on the one hand, remember, there are two groups of Latinos. There are, and even the Census Bureau identifies them as two groups. There's the non-white Latino, mm-hmm. and then there's the white Latino. And the mm-hmm. reason for that is that the white Latinos are considered the descendants of the Spanish conquerors that came in with the white culture. The non-whites are the descendants of those Spanish soldiers that took wives of the Indians in terms of the tribes that they met. And so they produced, and that's why you get in, even if you go to Tijuana on the streets, you will find the people from inland speaking a different dialect. If you spend some time with folks, you will find that often there's no great love for that other group, mm-hmm. Because of the class system, which is almost like India. Mm-hmm. So they today, the issue is that the Latinos have a reason to stick together the way we did in the civil rights movement, because mm-hmm. their goal is get all the relatives over here that you can so that we can all survive and have a better life. And we're sitting back complaining, but not working together to continue as other people pattern themselves after what we did to get the few gains. Our battle is not over. You know, the expression is "la lucha continua." The struggle does continue, and a lot of us have dropped out of the struggle and gone on recess. Mm-hmm. But the battle is still going on. You know, it's almost like the people at the Alamo, while, you know, they're coming for them, and you got some people on the wall fighting, other people inside taking a nap, saying, okay, that's not my battle right now, I'm on recess. So these things are important. And here in San Diego is even more critical, because we are in a city that has not lent itself to people staying together. If you look at the history, there were people like George Stevens and Carl Wayman and some other people mm-hmm. who really galvanized and struggled. You know, George was known for jumping on tables and doing all kinds of things, but he was one of the few people out of the 60s that was able to transition into the mainstream, mm-hmm. because most of those people who led those things, the system never forgot them, and it blocked them at every opportunity. Mm-hmm. So this is important, that we're trying to regain some ground that we lost, and we have a generation that doesn't know the history of what we had before we lost it, and don't understand the importance of what we're trying to get back, because they don't know what we lost. And so this is a problem. Until we are really prepared to sit and listen and learn, we're going to be in trouble, you know. And unfortunately, I keep thinking about Frantz Fanon, Wretched of the Earth, you know, the black French psychiatrist, Algiers, who said, that, you know, you can put a person's head down and put your foot on their face. If the head is turned sideways and they can breathe, most time they won't struggle. But if you turn their head nose down into the dirt and put your foot on the back, now they either have to struggle to breathe or they die. And for most folks, it takes a crisis to unify them. A crisis brought us together in terms of segregation, a crisis in terms of fighting Jim Crow. And here we still having a crisis today, okay, in terms of law enforcement, the George Floyds, and yet they're still killing us. And the manner in which the police are killing us suggests that they have no concern about the judicial system, any repercussions for their behavior, and they could care less. And we're sitting back ignoring it, but we're not powerless. And we don't need money to organize and to address what needs to be done. All we need to do is look at history. You know, I mean, the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia took place with the proletariat and the working masses, and all the people came together because they understood what their problems were. The revolutions that took place in South America that put Che Guevara and Castro and all these people in power against puppet governments, many of which were being propped up by the U.S. because of their business interests in those countries, though it was the people that came together that made things happen, okay? And so if you go back through the history of Mexico, Pancho Villa and Juarez and all of these people, they came up and brought the farmers and the poor people with them. Unfortunately, too many, once they got into power, they became a part of the very problem. We need to spend more time understanding history and looking at where we are as opposed to just shooting from the hip as if because we got a thought that makes everything legal and right. Oh, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to give you all that.
Well, you know, Dr. Warren, one of the things about it is as we look forth and begin to strategize of how we can come together to just strengthen not only our communities but the nation as a whole. One of our listeners said, support even when they do wrong. I don't think that we should ever support wrong.
No.
And I think that accountability is definitely not the enemy. I think that we definitely must continue to hold each other accountable. You know, you always say all skin folks ain't kin folks.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And just because you are African American or any cultural group, if you are wrong, you're wrong. And in this case, Donald Trump is wrong. You know what I'm saying? So we should not support wrongdoing just because we like him or we think that he's so wonderful. If it's wrong, it's wrong. Anybody who creates a riot that they take over the Capitol and they destroy that Capitol building on the day that you have your quote unquote, I'm not going to go to the inauguration because I don't feel like he won, so I'm going to sit up there, do my own rally and pout, and then I'm going to say, now go down there, and all this falls out. Anytime you see that stuff, wrong is wrong. And I think that we do have to hold people accountable. I think even in the African-American community, many times we give people passes where and they come back and do the same thing, and then we wonder why, you know, it happens.
Well, you know, that's why what's happening in Georgia is so important, Dr. Thompson, because it's not that people don't think Trump is wrong. Trump is a poster child for the racism and the elitism that some people have in this country who feel that we have done too much for those in need and that we are getting too brown and too black, and America is supposed to be lily white, and therefore we need to rally around any symbol we can hold up. I'm not concerned about them trying to take over the jails or anything, because they might have caught us asleep on January 6th, but we got more troops and firepower than they have. We also know that the bottom line goal of this radical element is to create a civil war in this country. That's what they want, and they want to see the country collapse. You know, 50 years ago, there was discussion.
Now who's they? Because everybody's like, you know, who's the they?
The they is that conservative MAGA white element that stands up and swears that Trump won even though logic and everything they see tells them that that's not so, they still believe it. I think that you're going to see them coming to grip with reality as a result of this indictment, because they got till next Friday. Arrest warrants have already been issued. The fact that they have been given the next Friday to turn themselves in is just an act of kindness on the part of the district attorney, number one. Number two, if they think that they're going to show up, walk in, and sit at a table like Trump and walk out, they are mistaken. These people, when they show up, they're going to be put in handcuffs. They're going to be photographed. They're going to get the little cards. They might have to do like regular folks. So when you get locked up, they're going to be sitting in custody. It ain't going to be no walk in and walk out of jail. Oh, no. They're going to spend some time waiting for it. They're not going to rush to arraign them for their convenience just because they are there on Friday. And, you know, in the legal system, if you show up on a Friday, you are normally going to be in custody until Tuesday. Because they're not going to hold no special sessions on the weekend. Okay, so you're going to be somewhere in holding. And some of these people, in terms of what they're used to and where they come from, just putting them in a cell for a couple of days, they're going to have to put them on suicide watch. So this is going to be a real critical time, and God help any of their little followers that think they're going to storm the jail and get them out.
And I think that is the society that we're living in now. But I think that we have to continue to push that voice of reason, because a lot of stuff is going on right now in the political realm. You're looking at we have several senators and Congress people that need to retire, but they are determined to die in office. You know,
well, let's just call it what it is. Okay. Dianne Feinstein, in her 90s, she should retire and give up that seat so that we can be represented and we could get stuff done. And I said this week, and she slipped and fell. I'm sorry she did. But, you know, Dianne, she's one of those old people set in her ways now, and she probably want to stay there. She says she's going to finish her term. The only way she won't finish her term is that she die in office before the term is finished. I'm not as worried about when she dies or leave as I am keeping an eye on the governor to make sure that he doesn't try to turn this into some popularity contest with stupid comments like appoint Oprah Winfrey or Whoopi Goldberg or somebody. Just say no, reality show. The only person that should be going into that seat is Barbara Lee, who has paid her dues in this state at all levels, and even before she got elected, serving in the assembly and the state. She was chief of staff to Ron Dellums. We worked together on Capitol Hill 50 years ago, and she has paid her dues. She's now a member of Congress, the founder of the Black Caucus in the state legislature, and we had a promise. How do we give the first black woman to the presidency as vice president and then deny the people the right to replace her with another black woman? The women have earned the right, and I hope the sisters are registering the votes, even if the brothers aren't, that they need to get out there in full numbers, not be persuaded by somebody with a cute smile or whatever tush they have, and deal with, we gonna vote, we're gonna do like Georgia, we're gonna make it happen. If Georgia could overcome that element so that we didn't get a Herschel Walker, we certainly can overcome here. And if the governor's got any future political plans, he better listen to black folks in this state.
Yeah, and you know, the thing about it is that, you know, a lot of promises were made. You know what I'm saying? A lot of promises were made, but we're not seeing them coming to pass. And so the only way we can hold people accountable is to be a part of it and be a voting bloc. And that's the reason why it's so important that we continue to be active, be involved. And if we're not active, if we're not involved, we can't then complain when certain things don't go our way.
Well, I have an editorial this week, and you can download our app and Google Apple Store, and you'll see this editorial. And I talk about Joe Biden, the presidency, and the black vote. And I am very concerned that I see some Democrats now saying, well, you know, his poll numbers are down. Polls don't elect people. Polls represent the opinion of some folks. Well, he's too old. Well, since when did age become a liability when age has brought the wisdom that's helped us through the last 3 years of recovery from the disaster that Trump created, both in terms of the pandemic, the economy, and our international status. But I am concerned that black folks don't be deceived by people like Cornel West running on a Libertarian or a Greenleaf or whatever the heck the party is about running for president. We don't have time for folks making token, look at me statements when we need every vote. We need to maintain the control of the House, of the Senate, and regain the control of the House. And we can do that. McCarthy's only got like about a six vote lead. That's why he's playing to Margie Taylor Greene and all of the Jordan and all of the other crazy folks there. So we need to be studying the House and looking at the districts in California. If it hadn't been for those northern districts that went Republican, we wouldn't have lost the control of the House. And see, the people in California need to understand something. I learned this years ago when California is a blue state, and they were trying to make the move to put Republicans in, both with Trump and before. The people in this state would call states like Minnesota or Wisconsin or Iowa, wherever there were people who had folks that they were trying to get elected. The people knew they couldn't change the vote here, so they would make contacts with their like-minded folks in other states and set up phone banks in California to encourage voting in that state to be supportive to those people. Well, that's not a new concept. They did that in Washington, D.C. 60 years ago when people like the former Congressman and Pastor Fauntleroy organized black folks to go into the states and the districts of the hard-nosed Southern Dixiecrats who were against home rule and got people to find candidates and support them to get those people outlawed. And so we just have to have a desire to be of service beyond ourselves.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, beyond ourselves. So many people have not really taken it serious about the things that we need to get done in this time in the season. And it's amazing. It's amazing that people to this day don't take into account that we got work still to do.
It is. And Dr. Thompson, we always like to remind people that our number is 858-251-6111. If you want to call or text in a comment, we welcome it. It's supposed to be open mic. Sometimes I talk really more than I want to, but I just think that there's so much that we don't know, and there's so much that we need to know. And if we knew more, then again, exposure expands expectation, and we will make a better use of what we have before us. Yeah. I don't think, I guess it was Robert Frost that said it in one of his poems, I don't think that we should go quietly into the night. I think that we should be fighting all the way, and we should be up and at it, and look, we're going to make this happen.
Yeah, and I think that is the key word, is that we must be active, be involved, be aware, ask the questions. And now we have to be really a student of our community, student of our neighborhoods, because so much is changing. So just recently we talked about safe sleeping areas. Some areas is going okay, some areas is not going well at all. What's your take on it?
Well, I think that there's so many of us that are a paycheck away from poverty, as Sister Beulah Underwood, Dr. Underwood said when she wrote her book some years ago. And she's a self-made millionaire that came up, put herself through school and everything, and got a PhD and retired from the community college district as a well-respected teacher, author. She was an investor. And there are people living paycheck to paycheck. We have a situation in the city right now of there are people who are ill, people who are not working, or they're caught between a disability, workers' comp. The rent has gone up so that someone said that a 6% pay raise in San Diego won't even pay rent because of how rents have just skyrocketed. And that's making a difference. That's why so many people are in their cars, Brother Thompson, because they had to give up their residencies. And God help them, if their cars get impounded, they're really in trouble. And the fact that we have families living in cars. So I say once again that about 20 years ago, our churches were opening up to families and they were taking them in at night. And it's a shame that people have to sleep in a car in a parking lot when there are churches that have space. They have members like Bethel AME was one of the churches that participated. They had their deacons come in and provide a night crew service, and they gave people a safe place in which to sleep. And then all of these places get people up in the morning. There's no reason we shouldn't be doing that again, okay? But we're not doing it. And, you know, some of us are not big enough to do it. You know, you got to have some members and some people that want to volunteer. It's a question of wanting to help others. Yeah. And that's so ironic for us as pastors, Dr. Thompson, because everything in the Bible centers around the importance of honoring the stranger as a guest in terms of what you share with them. And people do that in the South. If you go to the South, they'll give you their bedroom, they'll give you the best of what they have, and they'll sleep on something rather than just put you in a corner on the floor on a pad. And so we just don't, we got to return to that love and concern for others, because you know the expression, but for the grace of God we go.
Now, Dr. Warren, I'm gonna ask this question, you know, and putting on my ministerial hat, and you having your pastor's hat on. My question to you is simply this: there are monies being made available for the safe housing parking lots. There's money being made available to assist in this effort. My question is, if the churches begin to open up their facilities, why do we not then transfer that money that we would have spent over here over to the churches so that they can bring in professional people, create consistency, provide food at a cheaper cost than what they're paying for the contracted labor of city and all these different porta potties and everything else?
I am so glad you asked, and I'm going to give you a painful answer, Dr. Thompson. Some of it became visible during the pandemic. Most of these churches, the average church attendance in San Diego, and especially in our communities, I bet you is not 30 or 40 people. You know, there are a few big churches that might still have high numbers, but they don't have the kind of infrastructure or the organizational structure to provide the service that you're talking about. So many of them could not get any of the contracts because they aren't even structured as nonprofits, some of them. They aren't set up to do those things, and that gets to be a very, very important factor. The county has a faith-based advisory group with pastors. The district attorney has such a group as well. I don't know to what extent those groups have been asked to participate, okay? And then I saw someone raise the question about liability. You know, churches, we got to be more concerned about Jesus than we are about man. And churches I remember churches falling away, going back to amend their church bylaws and stuff because they were afraid that if a gay couple came and wanted to get married and they refused the marriage, they could be sued, and what would they do? God hasn't called us to respond with fear. You know, he's called us to be bold going forth. I believe it was St. Thomas Aquinas who made this statement, and it's a governing factor for me. And the statement that he made, he said that when the laws of man come in conflict with the laws of God must prevail. And we need to understand what that means. That means if there's a price to be paid, then we need to be willing to pay the price to do the right thing. And we've gotten away from that. There was a time some of our pastors were strong enough, they took to the streets marching against drug paraphernalia and all that. Those guys are old, they're dead, they're tired, they're gone, and the new ones are just concerned about the circling the wagons around their camp. And so the atmosphere is not there.
Well, you know, and I would say that I think there are still pastors out there that would do this. And I just want to use an example. And I'm going to use, let's just use Bayview. Let's use Bayview, one of the bigger churches in our community. They have facilities, they have that big whole hall and everything else of that nature. My question would be, and this is what I've been asking city people, is that if you're going to spend this type of money over here, why not take it where there's covering, there's bathrooms already there, and build the infrastructure if the church is wanting and willing to do the service.
And that's the key word, because you cannot force churches to do any of that.
Exactly.
The separation of church and state. And most of the churches, we got about 3 facilities that I can think of in the community that are big enough. And I won't even touch the Rock, because they're already doing stuff, and they have multiple large facilities, and they have thousands of people involved. Bayview, Calvary, Bethel, AME, maybe Bethel Baptist. These churches have auxiliary structures, but you got to have people to house them. You got to have a church leadership that wants to participate at that level. Now, some of these churches...
I want to highlight that you only mentioned African-American churches, because there are other churches out there too.
But I don't know what the other churches are doing, okay?
Yes, sir.
And maybe they are. I know that Shadow Mountain has been involved in a lot of ways with their satellite facilities. I know that from the pandemic, the churches that were feeding people, Encanto, Total Deliverance, Bayview in terms of their own food thing, Seventh-day Adventist, Maranatha. There are a lot of churches that are doing things at certain times. The Lutheran Church on Lisbon. And so they're just different ones. Let's not forget, what's his name out in Spring Valley? Bishop, you know what I'm talking about, Divine.
Total Deliverance?
No, in Spring Valley. He's got several churches. He had a heart attack.
Okay, Bishop Vines.
Bishop Vines, yeah. Always getting on him about taking it easy. Yeah. And so all of these people are doing things. He's got like a couple of churches, and he's got his churches working. So I don't want to give the impression there are churches who are doing what they can, but it's not just the churches doing what they can. It needs to be the community getting involved with the churches and offering to help the churches do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And so that's the problem, because we can't make people come to church. A lot of people went on Zoom in the pandemic, and they haven't come off.
Hey, and that's true.
And that's a part of the problem.
Yeah, that is very true.
And the virus is coming back again, and some of them going to circle the wagons and withdraw again in terms of it. And we don't have the support that we had for it before. So there are a lot of factors. My goal is to stir our awareness and our consciousness. Is not to be judgmental, but I have to call it the way I see it. And like the man say, if the shoe fits and it hurts your foot, then we don't know until you holler ouch. You know. But you're the one that can determine. Hopefully, we give you something to think about, and you can be concerned about maybe there is something. What can I do? Now, we can't help everybody, because we know a lot of people will misuse whatever you bring. They will hustle you to the nth degree, and that's real. So we're not asking anybody to be stupid. We just want to be wise.
And the thing that I would always challenge, and I'm a little bit older now, but I still am very optimistic that I believe that there are some churches out there with a little support and a little bit of money would just run with it, because that's their heart. They're already doing food pantries. They're already doing food, feeding the homeless. But if they had some extra things where they could actually, this reality is be able to hire some people that are around the church that might be unemployed, that will just gladly be able to be there to serve. So these are the things that I think that we have to always challenge as we move forth, because like Miss Maxwell always say, they're part of our community. They're just unhoused. Yes. You know what I'm saying? And we got to, and in our community, we have to begin to look at how do we deal with the community as a whole. You know, and I said to people when we used to have what they called gang issues, you know what I'm saying? They were yet still, we had to come in, they were yet still a part of the community.
Yes, they were.
And we had to then find ways to engage them so that they would become community participants and not community terrorists. You know what I'm saying? And so it's always about how do we activate to bring about a change. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Black Men and Women United. They said, look, we can't do it all, but we'll take a school. We'll take a couple of schools. We'll take Bell Middle School. We'll take Porter Elementary School, and we'll make impacts in those two schools. So we got 2 on it. and we got a little bit more than two, but I'm going to say we got two that real
Right.
visible.
Right.
Now we just need someone else to say, okay, you got those two, we'll pick up these two, and we'll do that. And if we continue to take little bites, what they say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time?
One bite at a time.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I want to continue to challenge, to ask the question, what resources do we already have? You know what I'm saying? And people are talking about, because Park and Rec is still there, and Park and Rec closes at a certain time.
Well, too, as you're talking, and my mind is running over the community, and for instance, the Helping Hand ministry on Imperial Avenue, that sister's been feeding people and clothing people for years without anybody asking anyone for anything. A lot of those older sisters or pastors that have the churches, they've made their connections with grocery stores and food entities, and so they're giving food to people every week because the hunger situation is up. Everything in the food basket, I think the statistics show that over June or July of 2022, what costs, the cost has risen from by $500 more over last year. So what was $200 in expenditure a year ago is $700 now, and people have not received raises and increases to offset those things, and so we still support a number of food pantries every week. The Voice and Viewpoint, in terms of getting papers to people to help them, and we just have to get more concerned. We have another crisis in California right now, and we're going to have to do a special show on it, Dr. Thompson. But the dollars that have gone away for Medi-Cal has created a crisis in terms of, hundreds of thousands of people that are going uninsured. And Cover California and the California Department of Health, there are all kinds of efforts being made now to get people into coverage who are not covered. Because little simple things, procedures, no matter what you didn't have. If you had Medi-Cal, which was for younger, unemployed or under-income people, it was to them what Medicare is to those of us who are 65 or older. And so that's a very important piece. And we're going to be doing some writing on the programs that are available, because we have a breakout by ethnic group in terms of how many people are in need. And one of the things that I was in a seminar yesterday on this, one of the things that has to happen is we're asking people, read your mail. If you see a yellow envelope, open it and read it. Because some people are not finding that they've been cut off until they go to the pharmacy and try to get a prescription refilled and find out they can't when it's medicine that they need.
Yeah.
Okay, so we want people to pay attention, and if you read that envelope, it'll tell you where to go and how to initiate the process so that you can restore the coverage that you lost.
Yeah. And Medicare, or not Medicare, but medical insurance is such a it's such a harsh topic, because it's almost, where do you start? You know what I'm saying? Just currently retiring, the first thing it is most people work longer, not because they need the money, because the retirement is there. They
want to keep the coverage.
They just want to keep the coverage.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Because currently, I was just doing some numbers, and to keep the same level of insurance that I had with city schools, that's $1,800 a month.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So people are like saying, how do we still retire but also have coverage? And they want you to work to almost 67 years old.
Yeah, they had to up it 2 years. But what you need to do also is you need to they call them navigators, and you need to have conversation with Cover California. And even so, you might not be successful in doing more than cutting that in half.
Yeah.
Because the amount of money that people are paying, I remember before I became 65, we were paying like $700, $800 a month. Okay. And so that's 14 years ago. Now I'm approaching 79. But if I had to pay for coverage today, I would be in trouble. But because we have Medicare and supplemental, and you get to pick who your supplemental is going to be. There are a number of options out there that could make a difference because in some instances you got to pay for every doctor's visit.
Yeah.
And you go in there and he says hello to you and you done paid the $30 just to say hi, and nothing happens. So we need to help each other. Health is an issue for us. Okay, housing is an issue for us. People who have food deprivation is an issue for us. Incarceration in the county is an issue for us in terms of how we're treated. And so these are major areas that both the county and the city can address, but they won't do it unless we, the people who are the taxpayers and residents, remind them that we know we put people there to do these things.
And with that being said, these are the type of topics, type of discussions that Biscuits, Grits, and Politics will delve in even deeper. We will also be able to have people and experts in the room. This is why we want everybody to make it out to the first Biscuits, Grits, and Politics.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Because, Dr. Warren, as far as I'm concerned, this is a political informational platform that, and we just make it kind of simple. Our sellout number, on the short end is 100.
Right.
We get 100 people in the room, we broadcast it live.
Yeah, but we can go more than 100.
Exactly.
And we kept the price cheap. I don't know where you can get catfish nuggets, grits, biscuits, scrambled eggs, sausage or toast, and coffee for $20. While you're having conversation and you're feeding both your body and your mind.
Yes.
And your spirit in terms of encouragement. So first event is going to be on September 19th, which is the third Tuesday in September, at the Joe and Vi Jacobs Center from 7 to 9 a.m. You can go on our website, the Voice and Viewpoint, and you can look in the paper where you'll see an ad for Biscuits, Grits, and Politics, and it has a phone number there for what is it called, Eventbrite?
Yeah, Eventbrite.
Eventbrite, and you can register and pay right online, and you'll have a seat there for it. It's not going to be a crowded situation in terms of concerns about we're not having more than 6 people at a table. We're spreading out in that area, and we do 6, so there might be, say, 3 people who bring a friend with them. But this is the time not to wait till the last minute, not to try to show up at the door to do it when you can get it done in advance, because we have to plan. And trust me, $20 is not covering the cost of what we're going to do. Okay, but it's our way of inviting you to be there. Unlike Black Men and Women United, this is open to everyone who wants to come. And so we are doing this for 3 months. We're doing it September, October, November. We have already lined up a phenomenal program for October, which you're going to really like. And so, like Dr. Thompson says, when we reach 100, just like the football games, then we'll make a decision to stream it. But we're not going to stream it if we don't get there. Yeah, so that's the way you football fans, you know how they work, right?
Yeah.
When they reach a quota, they'll put it on. If it ain't the quota don't be reached, you can listen to it, but you can't see it.
Now, I do have to tell a joke at the end of the show, and that is simply this. Now, it's Biscuits, Grits, and Politics. We're going to have some catfish nuggets. But I got one of our faithful listeners said, tartar sauce is a must.
We're going to have the tartar sauce.
But if tartar sauce comes, they're going to want hot sauce and everything else. And so I'm just laughing because I'm glad that people are letting us know, so that they don't come. Because, I never think of with catfish, when you have breakfast, they have tartar sauce.
Well, you got to have tartar sauce with the fish, okay? Because some people want tartar sauce, some people want ketchup. But I want the hot sauce, and we're going to do that. I was, many years ago, just to this closing note, Dr. Thompson, I was at an event with Tony Brown. Many people remember Tony. And he was saying, I'm at this thing, and I see these people going to this table back in the corner, and they just line it up around this one table where this man is. So I say to the host, I say, well, who's that guy back there that seems to be so popular that everybody's going to him? And he says, oh, that's Brother Jones. He got the hot sauce. So some people will bring their own hot sauce, you know, in those little bottles.
Yes.
But we're going to have big bottles of hot sauce, okay?
Yes.
Yeah, and we're going to have 2 sets of grits. We're going to have the buttery grits, and we're going to have the plain grits for you, okay? And the biscuits going to be homemade. They're not going to be Pillsbury.
Yes, and I do have to say this because I had an attitude with the kitchen because she woke up one Sunday morning and she wanted a Chick-fil-A chicken and biscuit, and Chick-fil-A is closed on Sunday.
Yes, it is.
So she decided to make her own Chick-fil-A chicken and biscuits.
All right.
And then put it online and had everybody asking, well, why didn't you call us? With that being said, this is from the Desk of the Editor with Dr. John Warren. We thank you so much for tuning in. Y'all can continue to tap into the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint. They're online, free. Newspaper coming out tomorrow
morning.
and it's going to be a great edition, and we want to thank you all for listening. We hope to see you next week. Be blessed.
All right, be blessed. What's that? Francine said tartar sauce is a must.
She said